dapat po munang alamin or matukoy ang pangunahing problema ng bansa upang mapagtuunan ng pansin at mabigyan ng solusyon.
We should have specific goals, do research, and make a policy that is fair for everyone.
Walang problema sa pulisiya. Iayos lang ang pagpapatupad.
Bago patubas ang batas, pag-aralan mo na gusto ng government.
Two things, clarity and execution. Both, you need the communication and monitoring. As simple as that.
Mandato ng Philippine Institute for Development Studies o PIDS na gumawa ng mga pag-aaral at pananaliksik ng mga pulisiya at programa ng pamahalaan at magbigay ng rekomendasyon sa mga mambabatas sa pagbabalangkas ng mga pulisiyang makakatulong sa ating bansa. Sinusulong ng aming ahensya ang evidence-based policy making upang bigyan diin ng kahalagahan ng pulisiya na batay sa datos at policy research na sumusuri sa tunay na kalagayan ng ating mga komunidad. Napakahalaga ng policy research, lalo na sa mga panahong dumadaan sa krisis ang ating bansa.
Kapag pulisiya ay pinag-aralan, susulong ang bayan!
In need of references for your research? Do you want a digital library that you can access for free anytime and anywhere? You don't have to look far. SERPI is here for you. SERPI is an online database of socioeconomic materials produced by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies. Government agencies, research and academic institutions, and international organizations based in the Philippines. It is the country's first online repository of socioeconomic information, created for policymakers and development practitioners, researchers, educators, and students. To access SERPI, just visit the PIDS website and click the SERPI widget under the Databases tab or type serp-p.pids.gov.ph. SERPI has a wide variety of materials such as journal articles, books, research papers, working papers, policy notes, audiovisual materials, and more. As of 2022, SERPI has more than 60 partner institutions contributing knowledge resources to the database. SERPI provides a comprehensive coverage of references encompassing 22 research themes: labor and education, gender and development, poverty, technology and innovation, trade and industry, and many more. On the enhanced website of SERPI, you can filter your research by keyword or author, publication type, research theme, or year published, all at the same time. SERPI has more than 7,000 publications and audiovisual materials that you can access and download for free. What are you waiting for? Visit SERPI now. Socioeconomic Research Portal for the Philippines, innovating knowledge exchange and policy research.
So what is PIDS? For over 40 years, the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, or PIDS, has been the country's foremost socio-economic think tank. It conducts rigorous and objective policy research and analyses that help the government in crafting relevant policies, plans, and programs in support of the country's long-term vision and development goals. PIDS pursues its mandate through three basic programs: research, dissemination, and outreach. Through its research program, PIDS identifies and prioritizes studies, develops proposals, and conducts research on priority areas. The results of these studies are then disseminated through different platforms, publications, online resources, PIDS Corner, seminars, and the Development Policy Research Month, or DPRM, held every September. To shed light on key policy issues, the advice and expertise of the Institute's research fellows are also sought by policymakers, government agencies, private sector, and civil society. Since 1977, PIDS has completed numerous policy studies on a wide range of development topics. This brand of service has then translated to policies and programs that have improved the lives of every Filipino. Philippine Institute for Development Studies, service through policy research.
Dapat po munang alamin or matukoy ang pangunahing problema ng bansa upang mapagtuunan ng pansin at mabigyan ng solusyon.
We should have specific goals, do research, and make a policy that is fair for everyone.
Walang problema sa pulisiya. Iayos lang ang pagpapatupad.
Bago patubas ang batas, pag-aralan mo na gusto ng government.
Two things, clarity and execution. Both, you need the communication and monitoring. As simple as that.
Mandato ng Philippine Institute for Development Studies o PIDS na gumawa ng mga pag-aaral at pananaliksik ng mga polisiya at programa ng pamahalaan at magbigay ng rekomendasyon sa mga mambabatas sa pagbabalangkas ng mga polisiyang makakatulong sa ating bansa. Sinusulong ng aming ahensya ang evidence-based policy making upang bigyan diin ng kahalagahan ng polisiya na batay sa datos at policy research na sumusuri sa tunay na kalagayan ng ating mga komunidad. Napakahalaga ng policy research, lalo na sa mga panahong dumadaan sa krisis ang ating bansa.
Kapag pulisiya ay pinag-aralan, susulong ang bayan.
In need of references for your research? Do you want a digital library that you can access for free anytime and anywhere? You don't have to look far. SERPI is here for you. SERPI is an online database of socioeconomic materials produced by the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, government agencies, research and academic institutions, and international organizations based in the Philippines. It is the country's first online repository of socioeconomic information, created for policymakers and development practitioners, researchers, educators, and students. To access SERPI, just visit the PIDS website and click the SERPI widget under the Databases tab, or type serp-p.pids.gov.ph. SERPI has a wide variety of materials such as journal articles, books, research papers, working papers, policy notes, audiovisual materials, and more. As of 2022, SERPI has more than 60 partner institutions contributing knowledge resources to the database. SERPI provides a comprehensive coverage of references encompassing 22 research themes: labor and education, gender and development, poverty, technology and innovation, trade and industry, and many more. On the enhanced website of SERPI, you can filter your research by keyword or author, publication type, research theme, or year published, all at the same time. SERPI has more than 7,000 publications and audiovisual materials that you can access and download for free. What are you waiting for? Visit SERPI now. Socioeconomic Research Portal for the Philippines, innovating knowledge exchange and policy research.
So what is PIDS? For over 40 years, the Philippine Institute for Development Studies, or PIDS, has been the country's foremost socioeconomic think tank. It conducts rigorous and objective policy research and analyses that help the government in crafting relevant policies, plans, and programs in support of the country's long-term vision and development goals. PIDS pursues its mandate through three basic programs: research, dissemination, and outreach. Through its research program, PIDS identifies and prioritizes studies, develops proposals, and conducts research on priority areas. The results of these studies are then disseminated through different platforms, publications, online resources, PIDS Corner, seminars, and the Development Policy Research Month, or DPRM, held every September. To shed light on key policy issues, the advice and expertise of the Institute's research fellows are also sought by policymakers, government agencies, private sector, and civil society. Since 1977, PIDS has completed numerous policy studies on a wide range of development topics. This brand of service has then translated to policies and programs that have improved the lives of every Filipino. Philippine Institute for Development Studies, service through policy research.
Welcome to the PIDS webinar series. Before we start our virtual event, we have some reminders. For attendees, your microphone is automatically muted upon entry. If you wish to join the discussion, click the Q&A icon, type your question, and click Send. For Facebook viewers, you may send your question using the comment section. Remember to keep your questions concise and direct to the point. We will screen all questions to ensure that they are relevant to the webinar topic and the presentation. The moderator will read the questions during the open forum and cover as many as possible depending on the available time. This webinar is being recorded and live streamed on the PIDS and SERPI Facebook pages. The recording will also be made publicly available on the PIDS YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your active participation.
Okay. Magandang hapon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on Bridging the Skills Gap, Insights and Strategies for the Evolving Philippine Labor Market. I am Sonny Domingo, and I'll be your host and moderator for this afternoon. Today marks the resumption of our public webinar series following a very successful month-long celebration of the Development Policy Research Month, our 22nd. We will be discussing one of the pressing issues addressed during the DPRM month, the skills mismatch in our labor force. The challenges of skills mismatch affect not only job quality, but it also hinders individual industry growth and limit opportunities. It is time that we look deeper into these issues. Before we begin, as usual, we entice you guys to actively participate via the Q&A box on Zoom and the comment section via Facebook Live. So to formally start our program, let us welcome PIDS Vice President Dr. Marife Ballesteros to give her opening remarks. Dr. Ballesteros.
Yeah, thank you, Sunny. And good afternoon and welcome to our public webinar on Bridging the Skills Gap, Insights and Strategies for the Evolving Philippine Labor Market. Allow me first to acknowledge the presence of the following: the Bureau of Local Government Finance Regional Office in CAR, Regional Director Mary Lou Gamboa, Cooperative Development Authority Institutional Development Service Deputy Administrator Ray Elevazo, National Economic and Development Authority Regional Office 3 Assistant Regional Director Dolores Molintas, PhilExport Vice President Maria Floriza Leong, Senate Economic Planning Office Executive Director Mervin Salazar, Capiz State University Dean Ian Arcega, Mariano Marcos State University Dean Sharona Baroga, University of Batangas Dean Priscilla Mispa Santillana, and Investing in Women Philippines Country Lead Francis Perdon. So let me also greet our guests, officials, and colleagues from the government, academe, the civil society, media, and the private sector, and as well as those watching through the PIDS and SERPI Facebook pages. So as mentioned by Dr. Sani, we have just concluded the 10th Annual Public Policy Conference last month, where one of the key topics was ensuring a future-ready workforce and protecting workers' well-being amidst technological change. During the discussions, experts agreed on the importance of fostering a culture of lifelong learning and adaptability to ensure a resilient, future-ready workforce capable of meeting the challenges posed by the Fourth Industrial Revolution. As we navigate this rapidly evolving labor landscape, the disparity between available jobs and the workforce preparedness remains a pressing concern. Despite robust growth in the national economy, in recent years we are still confounded by the policy paradox. We have too many job openings coexisting with chronically high unemployment and underemployment rates. This raises questions about how well the skills of our workforce align with industry and employers' demands. A 2022 study published in the PIDS Philippine Journal of Development revealed that 39% of employed Filipinos are overeducated for their jobs, while 29% are undereducated. This highlights some inefficiencies in the labor market and the education sector as well. Similarly, a 2022 report from the Philippine Statistics Authority found that the Technical and Vocational Education and Training, or TVET, are not effective, programs are not effective in reducing underemployment among young people. But even without TVET, we observe a significant percentage of graduates, approximately 15%, would likely still be underemployed. This indicates that other factors may be at play in the youth labor market that TVET alone cannot address. These findings emphasize the need for stronger alignment between the outputs of our educational institutions and vocational programs and the skills being demanded by the industry. A 2020 World Bank report further highlights this issue, revealing that about 1/3 of employers in the Philippines struggle to fill job vacancies due to applicants lacking the necessary skills. Furthermore, the increasing focus on reskilling and upskilling programs reflect the need to address the growing skills gap as technological advancements continue to reshape job trends. This skill gap does not only affect the quantity of jobs but also their quality. Workers with critical skills tend to earn more and enjoy greater job security, while those without such competencies are more likely to be underemployed or unemployed. The more we examine these trends, the clearer it becomes that the skill set of our workers are not just important in getting employment, they are pillars in nation building and the foundation for both professional and personal success. So in today's webinar, we feature two PIDS studies focusing on addressing the skills mismatch in the Philippine labor market and the role of skills in determining employment outcomes. The first study is about skills anticipation and prioritization of skills requirements framework of the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority, or TESDA. Which is an integral part to the development of labor market information system. And this will be presented by the PIDS Senior Research Fellow, Dr. Connie Bayudan Dacuico. The second study is about skills-based analysis of labor market structures and the pay gap across various sectors. And this will be presented by Dr. Dacuico's co-author, De La Salle University Professor and University Fellow, Dr. Lawrence Dacuico. So joining them to give further insights as discussants are TESDA Planning Office Executive Director Charlene Justimbaste, the Institute for Labor Studies Executive Director Jeanette Damo, and the University of the Philippines School of Labor and Industrial Relations Professor Emily Cabegi. We are grateful and honored to have you in this seminar. So to all our attendees, please stay until the end of the webinar and encourage you to actively participate in the open forum. Thank you, and I now give the virtual floor to Dr. Domingo.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ballesteros. So we are joined today by very esteemed presenters and discussants. But before we go to the actual discussants and the presentations, it is our tradition to conduct a very short poll before the main body of our engagement. So as mentioned by Dr. Ballesteros in her opening remarks, our conversation today centers on finding effective ways to bridge the skills gap in the Philippine labor market. We will explore how the right skills not only shape employment opportunities, but also influence career growth and economic resilience. With that in mind, what do you think is the right answer to this question? How wide is the skills gap in the Philippine labor market? You may answer not wide, moderate, wide, or very wide. So for those joining us via Zoom, please click the link in our chat box. And for those joining via Facebook Live, you have there as well a link posted in the comments section. So again, we'll give you a few seconds to answer this. The question is, how wide is the skills gap in the Philippine labor market? Not wide, moderate, wide, very wide. So right now we are joined by almost 200 participants via Zoom and Facebook Live. So just a few more seconds before we show you the poll results. Okay, so team, can you show our audience the results? So very interesting. Most of you answered wide. Some answered very wide. And nobody answered not wide. So it is definitely your perception and personal assessment that we have a very big gap in terms of our local labor market. And our presentations later on and discussions from our esteemed discussants or panel reactors will expound more on these. So let us now proceed to our presentations. Our first presentation is based on the PIDS study titled Labor Market Structures, Pay Gap, and Skills in the Philippines. This provides a skills-based analysis of the labor market, identifying specific skills that are in demand or lacking. It highlights key sectoral disparities between workers in elementary occupations and agriculture, and those in information technology and business process management and manufacturing, and the need for targeted skills development to fill hard-to-fill jobs. It emphasizes the importance of developing targeted technical and analytical skills to address labor market gaps and improve wage equality. We are very fortunate today to have with us Dr. Lawrence Takuykui, one of the co-authors of this study, who will present their findings and recommendations. His co-author, Dr. Connie Takuykui, is also here and will present the second study. Let me introduce Dr. Lawrence. He is a full professor and member of the Society of University Fellows at De La Salle University. He previously chaired the Social Science Division of the National Research Council of the Philippines and serves on key committees, including CHED's Technical Committee for Economics. He earned his Bachelor of Science and MS in Economics from the University of the Philippines and his PhD from Kyoto University, specializing in econometrics, migration, and macroeconomic modeling. His work has garnered awards from NAST, including the Outstanding Young Scientist Award. His recent research focuses on fiscal policy using the dynamic stochastic general equilibrium model. Thank you for joining us today, Dr. Lawrence. You now have the floor.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Domingo and Dr. Ballesteros, and to all of you who are present in this webinar this afternoon. Okay, so let me just go to the presentation. Okay, so the presentation is entitled Labor Market Structures and Pay Gap in the Philippines and Occupational Skills-Based Characterization. So it's a bit of a technical paper in terms of nature, but then we tried our best to focus or to apply a methodology that would allow us to identify the role of skills-based specificity and highlight the distance measure in the analysis of occupations. Okay, so we all know, all of us who are here are quite familiar with a mega trend, and that is coming from technological advances. And the implications are quite clear. The world of work that we previously know before is rapidly evolving. And the reason why a lot of agencies are trying to come up with these strategies is that we all believe in the primacy of skills development. And we all know that having poor national skills profile hurt the economy, and it reduces the complementarities between skills and degrade job mobility and wage growth. And we aspire to achieve better outcomes. And most of us think that having a more strategic skills development framework would allow us to reduce poverty and increase productivity, and more importantly, be given the opportunity to reduce labor market frictions in the form of mismatches in terms of skills. So the main advocacy of this paper is to focus on occupational skills, to highlight two measures, distance and then occupational skills specificity in occupations. And we believe that this is just one of the several ways through which we can better characterize labor markets in the Philippines. So we did a quick survey of the literature, and of course, if you're talking about skills, talking about jobs, occupations, and other labor market outcomes, we have to pay homage to human capital theory. And in the literature, of course, we are aware that there is a role for skills durable investments, and these are acquired through school attendance or be involved in job training. And among employers, of course, and even employees, there's this acknowledgement that investing too much in specific skills may not be a good idea at all. But we have to acknowledge that by investing in specific skills, we may generate higher returns. It's because we're the only ones who can perform some of the tasks that are quite complex. And because of this, we become more productive and as a result, better rewarded in the workplace. But by investing in specific skills, we also become more specialized, and that introduces inflexibility. So remember, we have the skills, and the skills are portable when we move from one job to another. And the problem there is that, we would like to go to another job that shares some of the similarities in terms of the skill requirements in our present job. Okay, so we all know even without referring to the literature, for workers to produce output, they need to accomplish tasks using skills relevant to the occupation. And in the literature, Although there are a lot of tasks associated with each of the occupations listed in the labor force survey, there's this acknowledgement that what we're dealing with are low-dimensional vectors of skill. Okay, so, and that's the reason why it becomes very difficult to map tasks to skills or to identify competencies without a formal framework embodied in a survey. And it's becoming clear that in the literature, there's this shying away from human capital. So why? Because the task approach is emerging as a dominant strategy to classify jobs. And this one prioritizes task content and skills requirements. So it's no longer enough to say that, okay, I graduated from college and I'm already a skilled worker. It's not going to happen because in the first place, the degree, let's for instance, economics, it can be classified as skill. It's considered a general skill. It's not a specific skill. And why is that? It's because skills, general skills, are going to be reweighted within firms. So we have general skills, and then when we go to a firm, they offer us jobs designed in such a way to maximize the skills that we possess. But then there's reweighting in the sense that it's not possible for a firm to simply focus on a particular skill, and then that particular skill receives 100% weight. That's not simply possible. So that's the relevance of um, skills in this particular context. And we all know that there's a general scheme for classifying occupations based on non-routine analytic, non-routine interactive, etc. And these are ways through which we're able to identify which jobs are really in danger of being affected by automation and then AI. Okay. So based on last year, and then individual skills are general skills, but may become specific to occupations once different skills have been combined and weighted within firms. Well, Becker is of the opinion that general skills are supposed to be applicable across firms, and then if you have specific skills, then it means that once you leave the firm that you have originally engaged with, well, you're going to lose relevance. Okay, in terms of skills that you possess, it's because it was assumed that the skills are supposed to be only relevant within the firm. So if you move away from the firm, then you have to retool, you have to relearn. Okay, and another central concept when it comes to this literature is the distance. So people tend to shift or to move to another occupation that shares some similarities in terms of skill requirements with the previous job that they have. So the skills do not depreciate, contrary to what Becker initially believed. They do not depreciate in the sense that if the occupations have similar structures, then it means that the worker, okay, can still benefit from his experiences in the past. And the best example is provided by Gottman and Schoenberg. So in the interest of time, I will just focus on one direction. So the carpenter is better off becoming or transitioning as a cabinet maker than becoming a baker. Okay, it's because there are some skills that are similar across occupations. And for the baker, it's not a good idea for the baker to become a carpenter. It's because these are occupations that may be a bit far from each other. But of course, and that's what the skills development programs are for, to at least be able to assess the distance between the occupations and to offer a training program in order to mitigate or reduce the costs associated with job transitions. So specificity and distance can be used to characterize the labor market. I'll show you that later. And they can be used. After all, these are measures that we can integrate in our programs, in our frameworks. And in the literature, the distance between two occupations can explain wage gains or losses in the event of job transitions. Okay, so there are well-accepted methods to organize skills data, but based on our assessment, Now, skills data are collected in any of the nationally representative surveys that contain the PSOC codes. So this, the PSOC is the Philippine Standard Occupational Code Classification Codes. Okay, so there are two methods. One is the direct method, and we are fortunate if we have ratings data to characterize the complexity of occupations. The other one is the indirect method, which uses factor analysis to extract information from the raw data of tasks. So we can actually carry this out. We carried it out, but then I will share with you some of the problems that we've encountered. So we used the indirect method, and we were able to extract the tasks enumerated in the PSOC code. So there are a lot of tasks, and then they vary across occupations. So we applied factor analysis and then proceeded to extract the task. So it became problematic because there are too many identified factors. And these are latent factors, by the way. And factor analysis will allow you to identify or measure these latent factors. And then when it comes to classification, tasks under each retained factors appear sensible. Okay, so you have tending, storing, delivering, raising, harvesting, planting, cultivating, so forth and so on. And we are going to assign, okay, if you're the researcher, you're going to assign this under a factor. In this case, it's factor 2. So how are you going to interpret factor 2? What kind of description is appropriate? And then there's this mapping challenge. So there's this challenge of mapping these 60 factors into broad types of skills. Again, it involves complex operation. And then we also have to deal with attrition in addition. So there are 10% of the occupations did not have under its list any of the 233 tasks. Okay, so it's difficult to implement the procedure. So in the absence of skills data in nationally representative surveys, we opted to adopt a crosswalk strategy. Now, what this one is telling us is that we try to use the Occupational Information Network database. And then based on the database, we were able to identify job tasks, skills, and other information. And the reason for this is, as I mentioned, we don't have available skills data in nationally representative surveys. Okay, so we use the ONET database in order to generate skills data. And the unit of observation, of course, is the occupation. So there are 35 skills descriptors in the ONET database. So essentially, if you have, let's consider the occupation dentist. Okay, so the dentist in the Philippines, being a dentist requires special skills, right? So there's also a dentist in the US because the ONET database is based on the labor market in the US, labor market information system, essentially. So how do you identify the skills for a dentist in the Philippines? And our argument is that it may be possible to refer to what the skills and competencies are for the dentist using the ONET database. Okay. So and then so that's what we did. So we were able to come up with this, implement the crosswalking strategy using the 2015 CPH PSOC codes. And we were able to reconcile. So as a matter of fact, these are the pertinent statistics that are associated with the crosswalking exercises. Okay. So we can use factor analysis in order to try to map tasks to skills, but then it's going to be difficult. So this is one of the several ways through which we can appeal to or we can gather skills data. Okay. And then we measured occupational specificity. In the ONET database, there is this importance data. Okay, essentially, they ask analysts, okay, which of the skills are important for this job? Okay, an information like that is critical for us to carry out the computations associated with specificity measure. Okay, so for instance, in this particular case, occupations 1 and 2 use active listening, coordination, monitoring, and then suppose there's a fourth skill, which is management in skills in occupation 1. So we proceeded to compute it this way. Okay, so the specificity, so we utilize the data on ranks. So we just have to compute it as follows, following this general formula. And then we're able to identify the degree of skills specificity in occupations. And then, for instance, if you are talking about building structure cleaners, the specificity measure is very low. It's because, because of the weighting done by firms. So the general skills that these workers are supposed to possess are not really that valued in the by the firm in terms of arriving at the weights. But then if you're talking about electronics engineers, the specificity measure is 1. Okay, so and then what we did was to map the 35 skills identified in the ONET in order to form a broader set of skills, and these are expressed in terms of groups, 5 groups: social, basic, analytical, management, mechanical, and mechanical skills. Okay, so and then we measure distance using the simple Euclidean measure. The idea is that if you already have data on the skills, it may be possible for you now to determine how dissimilar occupations are in terms of the skills requirements. So again, it's not going to be easy if you're going to rely on the indirect route, that is to compute for or identify factors. Okay. And some of the results are found in this table. So, for instance, we look at the occupations with employment of at least 1% and try to relate it to and then figure out the percent of employment relative to total working population. This is quite high, but then the average specificity for these occupations belonging to this 25 is quite low. So it may already reflects so we can in fact characterize what's happening to our labor market using the specificity measure. And based on the results that we were able to generate, we found that the NCR has the highest proportion of workers involved in occupations that use the social, fundamental, analytical, and management skills more intensively. And then Calabarzon has the greatest number of workers involved in occupations that use mechanical skills. And then in terms of gender, we found that 50% of males possess basic skills. And then when it comes to higher ordered skills, you have 16% of males versus 40% of females. Okay, so you also have this geographical distribution of the skills that can be properly accounted for by using the methodology. Now, usually the Department of Labor and Employment identifies in-demand jobs and then hard-to-fill jobs. And as mentioned by Dr. Ballesteros, there are jobs that remain unfilled, meaning these are advertised in order to entice applicants. But then they remain unfilled, and then what's worse is that there are still a number of Filipinos that are unemployed. So meaning that's essentially the result of poor matches in the labor market. Okay, so based on our analysis, in-demand jobs are mostly in agribusiness, hotel, restaurant, tourism, construction, health and wellness, wholesale and retail trade, and then IT, BPM, and manufacturing. So again, you talk about firms that are operating within each of these industries, and it's the firms that will try to determine the weights associated. That weight may be relevant for them, for their workers to perform the task, no? And then there are hard to fill jobs, and these jobs, they do require specific skills. So this is one of the justifications why the specificity measure may be or should be computed. And then the average social basic management skills are relatively similar to those of in-demand jobs. The average mechanical skills are lower, while the analytical skills are substantially higher. Okay, so there are other details that we can go back to during the Q&A session. Now, the paper also was able to characterize the gender pay gap, and of course, it depends on the data that was used, and based on the 2015 LFS, the mean daily pay of female workers is higher relative to the males, and this was in 2015. So what we did was to specify Minserian regression models that incorporate skills, and then perform the decomposition of the wage gap. And again, this is one of the benefits of being able to gather skills data. It's because it will also allow you to characterize wage outcomes. Okay, so the results indicate that for females, okay, it pays to have good social skills, analytical, management, and management skills. What does this mean? It means that if the measure or the estimate exceeds 1, then it means that it's actually an attribute that can reduce the wage gap. So as a counterfactual exercise, for instance, we may think of replicating, let's say, the performance of female students or female workers in terms of being able to accumulate or achieve competencies that promote social skills, something like that, or analytical skills. So that's one of the plausible applications of the methodology that was developed. So I will just highlight that the labor market structures play a role in reducing the pay gap. So it's always important to pay attention to factors that, let's say, promote labor force participation, that promote or enhance the universality of access to skills development and training programs, etc. So let me now go to the takeaways. I just have three minutes before wrapping up the presentation. Well, I think based on the results, we really have to reinvigorate our basic education sector. It's because how can we claim to address skills required for advancing manufacturing, for dealing with AI, for dealing with machine learning, if our students are not able to develop competencies in reading, in mathematics and science. So I'm of the opinion that we really need to improve our basic educational system for our students to develop clear competencies in subjects that we need to advance, let's say, manufacturing and industry. Well, we cannot overemphasize the importance of tertiary education. Okay. And I think, well, it wasn't measured, but then lifelong learning is definitely one of the key competencies that our educational institutions should focus on. And not only that, in industry, there must be a deliberate effort, okay, to promote lifelong learning, because it doesn't only happen in universities or schools. And then Tibet plays a big role, of course, in tackling in demand and hard to fill job situations. So there's also a need to assess the quality of jobs being created by the expanding sectors. Okay, so I think because we need reskilling and upskilling programs. And well, we have to pay close attention to a problem that's very persistent. So we need to encourage women to participate in the labor market, considering the results that was shown earlier in the regressions. There are a lot of issues here, and I don't think I have the time to really focus on each of them. And we need to leverage women's better educational achievements, okay, in order to mitigate the skills gap in highly technical occupations. So again, that's what this study is for, to identify the degree of skills specificity in occupations. It's because nowadays what we really would like to emphasize is that occupations rely on specific skills. Okay. So this is a part of our wish list. Best practices for collecting, analyzing, and updating labor market information should be integrated in our statistical systems. Okay, so I think that's it. Thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to listening to your comments and answering your questions.
All right. Thank you very much for that excellent presentation, Dr. Lawrence. I know that our participants have plenty of questions on their minds right now. And I would like to reiterate that you can ask your questions via both Zoom and Facebook Live. So you have the Q&A box via Zoom and our comment section via Facebook Live. Now let's proceed to our second presentation. And this is also based on another PIDS study titled Inputs to the Philippine Labor Market Information System and TESDA Skills Anticipation and Prioritization Skills Requirements Framework. The study addresses the broader issue of skills mismatch in the country, highlighting the need for a well-functioning labor market information system, or LMIS, to better anticipate and meet the skills requirements of the economy. It focuses on how data collection, partnerships, and institutional arrangements can support the development of a robust system to align education outputs with labor market needs. As mentioned earlier, it will be presented by one of our co-authors, Dr. Connie Bayudan Dakuy, who is a Senior Research Fellow at PIDS. She holds a PhD in economics from Kyoto University in Japan. Her research interests include household, family, and gender issues, poverty analysis, and applied economic modeling. Thank you very much for joining us today, Dr. Connie. You now have the virtual floor.
Thank you, Dr. Sunny. Can you hear me?
Yes, very well. You may
Okay.
proceed.
Okay. Thank you. So, just waiting for the. Okay. So, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge first my co-authors, Dr. Cristina Epetia, Miss Anarita Vargas, and Miss Anarita Vargas, sorry, and Mr. John Joseph Okbina. So, our paper essentially is an input to the Philippine Tibet. No, actually, this is not. So, Philippine Labor Market Information System and TESDA skills needs anticipation. So next slide, please. Okay, so the research objective of the paper is actually very simple. We wanted to provide inputs to the TESDA's skills anticipation and prioritization of skills requirements framework, or what we call SAPS-R. Next slide, please. So just to have an idea, this is the framework that we received from TESDA. So you can see here that there's an input. There are three elements in the framework of the skills anticipation framework: the input, the process, and output. So um, they have TESDA actually has a proposed labor market information system design, and then this LMI system has three outputs: national skills map, skills requirement, and the supermarket of competencies. And this is supposed to be an input to the framework itself. And so overall, this is the framework that TESDA has asked us to provide inputs to, and that is that we're going to do in a bit. But before we do that, next slide, please. We already heard a lot of buzzwords, like, for example, the skills need anticipation and labor market information system. So let me just take a step back and articulate the bigger issue in which we need to why are we discussing labor market information system and skills need anticipation. So what is the bigger context? And the bigger context would be skills mismatch. So skills mismatch is defined by ILO as it's essentially a discrepancy between skills demand and supply. So it can come in the form of skills gap, obsolescence, shortages, vertical mismatch, which is a mismatch between educational achievements, and then horizontal mismatches between skills type. And it's important for us to understand understand what the causes of it's important for us to address skills mismatch, because there are adverse effects at the individual level, meaning if you are overqualified, chances are doing something that you're overqualified for, then you can have lower job satisfaction, because you essentially have wage penalties. And at the firm level, skills mismatch can result in the lower firm productivity, and then under investment in innovation, and then of course higher labor turnover. And then as a whole whole economy, then there's a problem in terms of lower productivity, lower competitiveness, higher unemployment, and underemployment rates. And the reason for skills mismatch is that because information is incomplete and imperfect. So that is one of the key reasons why there is skills mismatch. Information about the skills demand and supply, or job occupation, jobs and occupation skills. The demand for jobs and occupations are incomplete and imperfect. And because it is some sort of market failure, like labor and information market failure, then there is a role for the government to intervene. And that is one solution: government intervention. But even though it falls under the public sphere, then it requires the participation of various stakeholders, for example, from the industry, private sector, academia, in order for us to move forward with a better solution. And so next slide, please. In the Philippines, we just wanted to highlight that even in the 1970s, skills mismatch has already been identified as an issue. And then 50 years onward, the issue remains. So, and that is something that Dr. Ballesteros pointed out, Dr. Sonny pointed out, and even Dr. Lawrence pointed out. These are already pointed out by PIDS studies and pointed out by ADB studies and even private sector. So it was there in 1970s, and then 5 decades now. The problem is still there. And again, what we can say is that mismatch is something that is a problem of information. It is a problem of imperfect and incomplete information, and therefore it can be mitigated by a well-functioning labor market information system, which brings us to the next slide. So what exactly is labor market information system? So first, what is labor market information? Labor market information is any quantitative or qualitative information that will tell us anything about labor market. So for example, those that are published by PSA, unemployment, underemployment, and those that are published by the DOLE, for example, on-demand jobs and hard-to-fill jobs, those are labor market information. But when we talk of labor market information system, this essentially revolves around around the processes to make the information useful. So it's a processes to make the information useful for policymakers, industries, and even to students and parents. So it's not just the data, but it involves how the data are collected, and then processed, stored and retrieved and disseminated. So next slide, please. Okay, so now what is the connection between LMIS and SNA? First, there are the labor market information system. It has many functions. The first two functions that we've listed there, the LMIS is just a tool. It's just a tool for labor market analysis. It's just a tool to aid monitoring and reporting. But the third one is it's highly evolved in the sense that it's not just a tool, but rather it's a mechanism to facilitate information exchange and collaboration among stakeholders and institutions. Now, what is SNA? SNA refers to activities that assess current and future skills needs in the labor market. And SNA is actually a bigger part, is a part of the bigger or broader labor market information system. So here we can see that there are key elements. The LMIS has key elements: data, methods and tools, analytical capacity, and then there's the overarching institutional capabilities and social dialogue. And these key elements, because it governs the labor market information system, it also governs the skills needs anticipation, assessment and anticipation. And as such, this is actually the basis of our inputs to the TESDA's skills anticipation and prioritization of skills framework later. But before we proceed to that, let me just share some good practices in the SNAs and LMIS first. So next slide, please. So the first good practice that we've noticed is, of course, because we're talking of labor market information system, is data. We noticed that we observed that most countries, they use graduate tracer studies because it actually forms the connection between the education sector and can you still hear me? Hello? Sorry.
Yes, Dr. Connie, please continue.
Okay, sorry, because something pops in my screen. So so what I'm trying to say is that we observed, based on our reading of the literature, that graduate tracer studies are very important because it forms the connection between the education sector and the labor market. It benchmarks institutional performance. It helps in improving curriculum responsiveness to the labor market demand. And then we also observed that public and private employment services are being used by other countries. It's actually providing job matching services to job seekers and employers. And then another good practice that we notice is that countries are already moving toward big data analytics and non-traditional data collection strategies. Of course, we know the traditional data sources. We wanted that because they are generally representative of the population. But sometimes it takes a lot of time before it can be finished, and so it lacks the advantage of offering real-time information and updates. And at the same time, most often than not, it lacks the necessary granularity of the data that we wanted in terms of analyzing skills. So so the other countries are already harnessing big data, using the online job vacancies and job seeker credentials. What I just wanted to point out here is that there are disadvantages in harnessing big data because postings are usually coming from the formal sector, and so for a developing country like the Philippines with very high informal sector, it can result in underestimation. At the same time, there are multiple postings which can or the reverse result in overestimation naman. And so those are the things that we've noticed in terms of big data. Next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of collaboration and engagements, we noted that countries are doing stakeholder and expert consultations, and then this is good because it complements the quantitative data. And then there are also a lot of sectoral involvement going on in the process of their development of the labor market information system. And this is good because it ensures the complementarity of strategies among sectors, and at the same time, it enhances the interoperability of data systems. At the same time, we noticed that it's very important to have the LMIS development of LMIS to have sectoral involvement, because it helps to set boundaries, meaning it prevents the overlapping of tasks and thus in the process maximize resources. So in terms of dissemination practices, we observed that most countries are leveraging dashboards and visualization tools. So, and then in terms of financial resources and sustainability, we noted that countries with longer term funding, they tend to have more comprehensive work plans and established data collection systems, and which this can be very challenging for developing countries like the Philippines, because sometimes most often than not, the initiatives like this can have low priority, and it can be prone to budget cuts. And we also noticed that partnership and strategic financial planning are being done, in the sense that many countries source their funds for the LMIS and SNA initiatives using government funds, but they also tap international and domestic collaborations. Next slide, please. Okay, so the third one, this is key to our inputs to the TESDA's SAPs are, we observe two things. One is that most labor market information system that are well functioning, they have skills taxonomy, and second, they have skills and occupation mapping. So let us break that down. Let us break that down in two things. So skills taxonomy is just a system to classify skills. So it depends on the economy and its labor market structure. So for example, the ONET that was emphasized in the earlier paper, it only used two skills, basic and cross-functional. But it has 35 skills all in all. 8 of which are classified under the basic: math, science, speaking skills, writing skills, comprehension, critical thinking, monitoring, learning strategies. And then under cross-functional skills, there are complex problem solving skills, resource management skills, social skills, system skills, technical skills. So they have 35 skills identified all in all. And the good thing about having a skills taxonomy is that it provides structure to data collection. And then it also facilitates the discussion. So when agencies are talking, then they know exactly what they're talking about in terms of skills. What are the skills that we're talking about? We know because there is this skills taxonomy. So that's the first thing. The skills occupation mapping, essentially, because they already have the skills taxonomy, they map it with the standard occupational code. And to visualize this, to help us visualize this, for example, science and engineering professionals. There are meteorologists, chemists, geologists, mathematicians, statisticians, data scientists, etc., etc. So each one of these will have skills data. And I think Dr. Lawrence mentioned something about the importance. So for each skill, for example, speaking skills, each occupation will be each occupation will have some sort of importance in terms of how important is the speaking skills for this kind of occupation. So essentially, to visualize it, it is a matrix of occupation codes and skills. And the good thing about having skills occupation mapping is that one is that, again, standardized. Everything is standardized. We understand each other when we talk about skills. And then second is that having skills occupation mapping, it enhances the value of standard data sources and other surveys that do not have skills data content. So for example, LFS, FIES, or APIS, these are standard data sources. But when we have the skills occupation mapping. We just have to merge, and then voila, you already have skills data in LFS, and so we'll be able to do a lot of research to inform policy in terms of labor market dynamics, job transitions, transferability of skills distribution across different level of disaggregation, and so. And then in the next slide, not muna, wag muna. Balik tayo, balik. Okay, balik tayo. Okay, so yan. So, no, go back ulit. Go back. One more. Okay, so I just wanted to say that here in the ONET, because the ONET is already emphasized in the first paper, we just wanted to, because I'm really a big fan of this ONET, and because it helped us visualize kung gaano, how far along are we in terms of having skills data. And I just wanted to say that ONET started in the 1970s. So ONET is not as comprehensive as it is then, as it is now, but it didn't happen overnight. Its comprehensiveness didn't happen overnight. And it took time. It evolved, but now it's really comprehensive. It's not just a labor market information system. It's helping people to chart their career pathways, etc., etc. And the good thing about ONET is that it is used also by other labor market information systems in Europe. It's also used by Canada and Australia. So next slide, please. Okay, so I just wanted to point out that we have existing LMI and LMIS initiatives here in the Philippines. So for example, Dole, they have the Jobs Fit before, which is now, I believe, Jobs and Labor Market Forecast. PhilJobNet and PEIS, we also have that. PhilJobNet, it facilitates an online job matching platform. And then under PIS is actually housed in that one. PIS is the Peso Employment Information System. So the issues here that we've identified is that one is the representativeness of the demand for skills. Again, only the firms that are registered in the PhilJobNet are coming from the formal sector, but we know that we have a very high informal economy, and therefore they are underrepresented. And then TESDA also has the skills map report. But our issue here is that the skills map, sometimes the skills that were identified there sounds to us like it's like these are jobs or broad occupation categories or knowledge or work activities. So this highlights actually the need for a skills taxonomy that perhaps we as researchers do not understand what skills are, and so it really highlights the need for taxonomy. And then Philippine Skills Framework Initiative by DTI. One issue here is that it needs PISOC alignment. It does not use the Philippine Standard Occupational Code, and also the dissemination can be improved. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're ready to go to the insight. I already have, I'm overtime, but I'm already on the overtime. But please bear with me. These are the inputs to the TESDA skills anticipation and the prioritization. Next slide. Okay, so in terms of elements, perhaps we can go to the next slide. Okay, so here, what we can say here is that we've summarized everything, and what we just wanted to say here is that you can see that the labor market information system, the first thing that we have to do is we need to have skills data foundation, which is something that we do not have. And so the first thing that we have to do is to craft a skills taxonomy by using and then map it with the Philippine Standard Occupation Code. Once we have the skills occupation code, then we can already make the standard data. We can already make skills data available in standard data, as I've already mentioned, LFS. We just have to merge, and then voila, you already have the skills data in standard data. Skills occupation mapping is also important in terms of in the future, if we wanted to use big data, it's very important as well, because big data is just data. It needs structure in terms of getting information, valued information, and the skills occupation mapping will help us do that. And so if we already have the big data, it can also there's some sort of feedback going on, because big data can be used in order to update the skills occupation mapping. And once we already have the skills occupation mapping, it can also guide the qualitative data collection. And once we have the data right, then we can perform skills forecast, we can perform skills foresight, and then we can come up with any with the final outputs that we wanted. In this case, for the TESDA's skills anticipation and prioritization of skills requirement framework, to craft training regulation and competency standards development. And so this is the kind of information that the kind of information that we provided inputs into the TESDA subs are. So next slide, please. So going to the summary and some insights, please give me like 3 minutes more. Our country, we've already identified that we have a lot of good data sources, but there's still a lot of improvement. One is that we need to establish a system that recognizes and classifies skills. We need to have skills taxonomy. And then we need to map this skills taxonomy with standard occupation classification code in order to improve our skills data foundation. And then we need to collect PSOC at higher disaggregation in government-initiated surveys. And then we also note the importance of graduate tracer data sets. And we also note that big data use is something that is aspirational to the Philippines currently. So next slide, please. Okay, so some insights in terms of institutional arrangements and collaboration. We've identified that in order for the labor market information system and SNA initiatives to work, there has to be somebody who holds the stick and then telling people what to do. And we've identified DOLE to be the agency to do that. So DOLE, it has to oversee the development of skills data foundation, the taxonomy and the mapping that we're talking about, and forge institutional arrangements and international partnerships. In terms of government, then we have to strengthen they have to strengthen the PESO in terms of coverage and the quality of services they provide. Other key agencies like DOLE, TESDA, NEDA, there is a need to cultivate a culture of multi-stakeholders collaboration. It maximizes the use of resources, and it will definitely help in the sustaining of the initiatives. Next slide, please. Okay, in terms of data, again, we're emphasizing here, we need to develop a skills taxonomy, and then DOLE, TESDA, NEDA, and other key agencies has to sit down and then talk what are the skills that are relevant to us. But of course, it has to be participated by the private sector, by the industry, by human resource practitioners, etc., because they know more in terms of what skills are really relevant to the structure of the economy. And in terms of agencies collecting labor market information data, again, use standard classification codes. We've noticed that, of course, DTI, the PSF, the Philippine Skills Framework, it did not use the PSOC. And then for the government, it's important for us to institutionalize the collection of the Philippine Identification System, or the national ID number, in the administrative data. And then the reason why we were saying this is that if we collect the PhilSys number at salient entry and exit points, like for example, enrollment, graduation, hiring, transfer, participation in training, it will become a powerful to match education and employment outcomes. So we don't have to do actually tracer studies anymore, tracer surveys anymore. All we have to do is to have a MOA with agencies to get the information needed. And so it reduces the need for tracer surveys, which can be very costly to collect. And then lastly, last slide. Okay, in terms of dissemination, again, we emphasize that it's very important to use websites and dashboards with visualization tools and links to other knowledge generating sources. And in terms of support, very important. It's very important to have continuous support to sustain the LMIS and SAPSAR initiative because the availability of long-term funding for LMIS, it provides a well thought out data foundation and a coordinated data collection system. I think that's the last slide. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much for that very comprehensive presentation, Dr. Connie. We'll have more time to discuss the presentations of Dr. Connie and Dr. Lawrence later on during our open forum. Again, let me enjoin our participants to post questions via Zoom and Facebook Live. Just include your name and your affiliation. So moving on, let's enrich our discussions via the manifestations of our esteemed discussants. So we have invited three excellent discussants. Allow me to introduce our first discussant, Ms. Jeanette Damo. She is the Executive Director of the Institute of Labor Studies at the Department of Labor and Employment. She started her career as at DOLE at the ILS as a research assistant in 1989 before being promoted to Chief of Labor and Employment in 2003. She transferred to NWPC in October 2008 as Director 2 and was eventually promoted to Deputy Executive Director in 2014. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Executive Director Jean Damo. Director Jean, you have the virtual floor.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sunny. Am I clear? Loud and clear?
Very loud and clear. You may start.
Okay po. Okay, thank you. So first, allow me to express our appreciation for inviting the Institute for Labor Studies of the Department of Labor and Employment as one of today's discussants for the study on inputs to the Philippine labor market information system and test the skills anticipation and prioritization of skills requirements framework. So we commend the authors of the study for their valuable contributions, and we note that the conduct of this research was specifically designed to address the policy and implementation needs of TESDA regarding skills anticipation and prioritization. At the Institute, we deeply value these collective collaborative arrangements with implementation partners as they bridge the gap between research and practice. Such partnerships not only enhance the relevance of our research findings, but also ensure that they are actionable and aligned with the real-world challenges faced by stakeholders. At the outset, next slide, please. Next slide, please. At the outset, the findings of this study affirm several priorities outlined in the Philippine Labor and Employment Plan 2023 to 2028, which emphasizes the importance of shared labor market governance and the establishment of an effective and efficient labor market information system. The author's insights into the skills anticipation and prioritization of skills requirement of SAR framework and the broader LMIS, particularly concerning institutional arrangements and collaboration, data utilization, and dissemination strategies are timely as the government led by NEDA, DOLE, and DTI, who works on the 10-year Trabaho para sa Bayan Master Plan. So this employment recovery initiative aims to tackle long-standing labor market challenges, including job quality, the perennial problem of skills mismatches, and underemployment, issues that have historically affected our workforce and impeded economic growth. DOLE also maintains dynamic and responsive labor market information systems and services towards efficient information flow, better skills anticipation, and competency forecast. The department's Bureau of Local Employment, in particular, maintains three major labor market information systems, and these are the Integrated Field Job Net, the PESO Employment Information System, the Career Information System, and the Job Displacement System. Next slide, please. Field Job Net is an internet-based job and applicant matching system which aims to fast-track the job seeker's search for jobs and the employer's search for manpower. It is a facility of the DOLE with centralized database maintained by the Bureau of Local Employment. As part of the digitalization efforts and in order to enhance department's LMI ecosystem, we have integrated the processes and databases of Field Job Net and PEIS for a more efficient system of managing and reporting jobs and skills availability in the labor market. The integration of the systems allow for more efficient and effective delivery and monitoring of employment facilitation services. We also lodge under the PhilJobNet website our career information system. The CIS houses digitized version of our career guides, which provide valuable information such as nature of work, basic educational requirements, skills and competencies, attributes, employment opportunities, and cost of education and training. Next slide, please. The Bureau also maintains the Job Displacement Monitoring System, a nationwide database of displaced workers based on establishment reports submitted to DOLE regional offices. Next slide, please. For further guidance on career planning and decision-making, DOLE, again through the Bureau of Local Employment, releases labor market information publications to update the public with reliable and relevant information on the realities of the labor market situation. These resources can help an individual make informed plans and choices related to career planning and preparation, education and training, and jobs search. Next slide, please. Using the themes provided in the insight portion of the author's study, allow me to provide these reflection points for the author's consideration. On institutional arrangement and collaboration, to ensure that the SAP-SAR framework and LMIS effectively capture industry demand and the skills needs of workers, it is essential to establish meaningful ongoing collaborations among governments, employers, and workers. Such collaboration must go beyond mere consultation. It requires that the inputs and perspectives of all stakeholders are actively integrated in the LMIS. Identifying potential entry points for this collaboration is crucial. Second, one viable approach is through the industry tripartite councils, or ITCs, which can be monitored and coordinated by the Bureau of Labor Relations, again in collaboration with the Bureau of Local Employment of DOLE. These councils provide a structured platform for dialogue, ensuring that the voices of employers and workers are heard and that their insights directly inform labor market policies and initiatives. Another low-hanging fruit are TESDA's industry boards, which serve several important functions aimed at improving alignment of technical education and skills development with industry needs. Industry boards provide expert advice to TESDA on the skills and competencies required by specific sectors, ensuring that the training programs remain relevant to current and future industry demands. They assist in developing and updating training regulations to reflect industry standards and technological advancements, helping to ensure that graduates are job ready. They foster collaboration between TESDA and industry stakeholders, facilitating partnerships that can enhance training opportunities such as internships and on-the-job training. Industry boards also help assess the effectiveness of existing training programs and provide feedback on how these programs can be improved. Industry boards may also make policy recommendations to TESDA board and other government agencies regarding workforce development and skills training initiatives. And then lastly, in addition, drawing lessons from the Australian government's Jobs and Skills Councils model, we can also partner with the Alliance for Future Work through the Philippine Business for Education that advocates for the establishment of sector skills councils. These councils, composed of industry experts, would offer data-driven insights and research on labor market needs, allowing for a more responsive and tailored approach to skills development. Next slide, please. So in partnership with industry associations, AFW, or the Alliance for Future of Work, is actively supporting the formation of SSCs in several key sectors. On analytics and artificial intelligence, collaborating with AAP to address emerging trends and skills gaps in this rapidly evolving field. On fruits and vegetable processing, partnering with the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry's Human Resources Development Foundation to enhance workforce capabilities in this vital agricultural sector. On semiconductor and electronics, working with the Semiconductor Electronic Industries in the Philippines Foundation, or SAFE, to ensure that the skills development initiatives align with the sector's specific needs and technological advancement. And lastly, on healthcare, collaborating with the Unilab Foundation to address the growing demand for skilled professionals in the healthcare sector, particularly in light of recent global health challenges. By fostering these collaborations, we can create a robust framework that not only meets the current labor market demands, but also anticipates future needs, enhancing the resilience and competitiveness of the Philippine workforce in the long run. Next slide, please. Drawing inspiration from the good practices observed in the countries cited in the study, one immediate recommendation we can look into is to establish partnerships between the government and digital labor market intermediaries, such as JobStreet, Caliber, or LinkedIn. These partnerships can support the data-intensive and real-time information needs of the LMIS in the following ways. On data sharing agreements, initiate agreements with DLMIs to access comprehensive data on job postings, hiring trends, and skill requirements. This will help DOLE analyze real-time labor market dynamics. On collaborative research initiatives, work with DLMIs to conduct joint research on labor market needs and skills mismatches. This can provide valuable insights for shaping training programs and policies. On enhanced job matching, leverage the capabilities of DLMIs to improve job matching processes, ensuring that job seekers are connected with relevant opportunities based on their skills and qualifications. On skills mapping, use data from DLMIs to create a skills map that identifies current skills in demand and those that are emerging, helping to inform training programs and curriculum development. On public awareness campaigns, collaborate with DLMIs to run awareness campaigns that educate job seekers on available training programs and employment opportunities, fostering a more informed workforce. And feedback mechanism, establish feedback loops where employers can provide input on the effectiveness of training programs based on their hiring experiences, further refining the LMIS. Aside from DLMIs, it was also suggested to institutionalize the conduct of the graduate tracer study for higher education and vocational courses practiced in other countries. We affirm that this action can provide benchmark for institutional performance, check the employment outcomes of students, and improve curriculum responsiveness to labor market demand that is useful to LMIS. Next slide, please. Moreover, the institute recognized the importance of partnerships and collaborations with government bodies such as the National Innovation Council, the Philippine Skills Framework Council, the Philippine Qualification National Coordinating Council, and the Working Group on the Digital Workforce Competitiveness to address job skills mismatch and unlock the potential of the Filipino workforce. This interagency mechanism harmonize and coordinate various government efforts to promote lifelong learning and skills development. On support, insights on support. Next slide, please. On the provision of continuous support to sustain the LMIS and SAPSAR, the authors may want to explore the inclusion of the program convergence budgeting for livelihood and employment program. The PCB is an interagency approach that focuses and coordinates government resources towards the achievement of livelihood and employment priority programs like the LMIS and SAPSAR framework. To also complement the government funding, these initiatives may be enrolled among the pipeline funding of the Philippine UN Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework under Outcome 2, which focuses on decent work, among others. The UNSDCF is a unique and innovative collaboration between the Philippine government and the UN Philippine Country Office. On the provision of support for capacity building, next slide please, it is recommended to include continuous strengthening of capacities and skills of PESO to respond with the localized data requirement of SAPSAR and LMIS. PESOs are vital local institutions in the utilization and generation of ground and area-based location and skills information. So to close, the Department of Labor and Employment is committed to a vision that will continue to provide the support, incentives, and enabling environment needed for industries to thrive. We will ensure that the benefits of this growth are shared equitably with the hardworking women and men who power our economy each day. Thank you, and good afternoon.
Well, thank you very much, Director Jean. Please stay online for our open forum later on. So now, allow me to introduce our second esteemed discussant. We have Executive Director Charlene Mustimbaste. So ED Charlene is the Executive Director of the Planning Office of TESDA. She previously served as Assistant Executive Director and Chief of the Project Development Division, overseeing international commitments in technical vocational education and training, or TVET, and project development with organizations like ASEAN and UNESCO. She has also managed the corporate planning and labor market intelligence units and has experience with the Commission on Information and Communications Technology and the Commission on Appointments. ED Charlene holds a degree in Human Ecology and a Master's in Development Management from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. ED Charlene, you may now have the virtual floor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Domingo. Isang magandang hapon po sa ating lahat, sa mga presenters at kapwa ko panelists.
ED Charlene, can you increase your volume, please?
Is this better, Dr. Domingo?
Still a bit inaudible.
Okay, magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Okay, and to Doc Bingo, salamat po sa introduction. So, sa lahat ng mga presenters at sa mga kapwa ko panelists, sa mga nanonood online, kasama po natin dito sa Zoom, magandang hapon. And thank you very much to PIDS, especially to Dr. Babes Orbeta, sa pag-imbita po sa amin sa TESDA sa webinar na ito. And we thank you for the opportunity to react on this important study on the Philippine labor market information and TESDA's skills anticipation and prioritization skills requirements. We have actually requested the help of the PIDS on this, where we were given a provision from our GAA for the conduct of this study. And we are thankful and we commend Dr. Connie Dakoy and her team, including Dr. Ipesha, for their thorough analysis and insightful recommendations. So as we have heard, the study highlights the critical need of a well-functioning LMIS to address skills mismatch in the country. So indeed, a robust LMIS is essential in anticipating skills, meeting the skills requirements of our economy and aligning it in our education outputs to the labor market needs. So TESDA being an education agency, we welcome the findings and recommendations of the study as we are pursuing really an area-based demand-driven pivot, which is the strategy of our National Technical Education Skills Development Plan 2023 to 2028. Our NTSDP is actually the TVET sector plan is not the plan of TESDA, and it has a vision of really having a globally recognized Philippine TVET, which is a catalyst for lifelong learning and socioeconomic transformation. And the plan is aligned to the Philippine Development Plan. This is also supportive of the TESDA Best 8-point agenda of our new TESDA Secretary, our Director General, Secretary Jose Francisco Benitez. Our Secretary has presented to the President this 8-point agenda for TESDA, which aims to transform our TVET ecosystem to produce more graduates that are work-ready and future-ready and competitive in an agile and fast-changing world. So this 8-point agenda, in summary, would be the following. So it's the first letter actually of the first 8 letters of the alphabet para madali po nating maalala. So it's first is access to TVET. So this is more of expanding access to our TVET programs through our scholarships and free assessments and to enhance employability of our graduates. This would also, number 2 of the agenda is behavior and mindset change, which is to really cultivate a dynamic organizational mindset, instilling among the internal and external stakeholders and enhance the efficiency and quality of our programs. Pangatlo po dito sa 8-point agenda is the competency standards, training regulations, development for new and higher level qualifications. So these are really about developing more programs for high-skilled jobs and promote workforce agility amidst changing labor market. Fourth is demand-driven and data-driven. So this is really about strengthening partnerships with industry to align training programs with market needs and enhance labor market intelligence and evidence-based TVET programming. Number 5 is employment outcomes. This is about enhancing employability and facilitate employment and career progression of TVET graduates, which is really aligned to the recommendations of the study, both by Dr. Connie and of course, Dr. Lawrence. Number 6 is flexible learning and facilities. So this would enable different learning modalities, improving quality of TVET programs through our immersive experience and use of adequate facilities and appropriate technologies in terms of training delivery. 7 of the agenda is about global
Okay, I think Director Charlene
ladderization.
is. Okay, excellent. You're back.
Yes, okay. Nawala ako. I'm sorry. Okay, so yes, last is about harmonization with senior high school curriculum, ladderization with higher education and lifelong learning pathways. So this is really about enhancing the employability of our senior high school graduates by integrating TVET standards in the senior high school curriculum and enabling multiple pathways and learning for our learners through the ladderization programs. So this strategy, so yun po yung nabanggit po kanina, we have already looked into all of these recommendations by the PIDS study, and we have started some initial work on the findings and recommendations. So first is on addressing the need for clarity and consistency in the mapping of skills across various occupations. So TESDA has been collaborating with the Philippine Statistics Authority already on the alignment of TVET programs to the PISOC, so to the Philippine Standard Occupations Classification. So we see this because the adoption of a robust, as mentioned po by Dr. Connie, skills taxonomy will enable us to fine-tune yung competency standards, our competency-based curriculum and assessment tools. Pangalawa, on the use of PhilSys ID to enhance the mechanism of collecting tracer data, we shall look into this as TESDA is also planning to enhance our study. We're conducting the study and employment of TVET graduates annually. So we hope that TVET adopts to the PhilSys in the tracking of TVET graduates or our beneficiaries. We also hope that it will be institutionalized not only in TVET but also across the whole Philippine education system and among employers para isa lang ang tinitingnan nating number or ID ng ating mga graduates or the part of the education system. On the potential of our pesos and the PhilJobNet to support our SAPSAR efforts, TESDA and DOLE, since our DOLE is our mother agency, we are working together on a joint memorandum circular which aims to strengthen the linkages of the two agencies' programs. So kasama na po dito yung mga public employment services, labor market information, and yung the link of the PhilJobNet, so among others, para mas malink po natin lahat ng programa from the employment facilitation programs ng DOLE and that of TESDA. We also recognize that the study identified the need for a collaboration among agencies, among DOLE, TESDA, CHED, PEDNED, and the PSA in the private sector. So we are really supportive of this because that's also part of our strategy now, as I mentioned, as part of the 8-point agenda of our secretary. So we support the strengthening of partnerships with our stakeholders to ensure that skills anticipation initiatives are grounded in real-time labor market realities and that data collection efforts are sustained. In addition, this study mentions that the DOLE leads operationalization of the LMIS, and that, as the study indicates, its scope is not only for TVET, and given its primary responsibility for labor market information analysis at the national level. We have also, it was also mentioned in the study, the importance of capacity building at all stages of the SAPSAR frameworks as shown by Dr. Connie. So we recognize the need to be able to harness knowledge from big data sources and to correctly choose and implement the appropriate combination of qualitative and quantitative methods to really analyze and validate results. So TESDA also needs to be capacitated to effectively communicate the LMIS and the SAPSAR data to a broad audience, including, of course, students, job seekers, and policymakers. So this capacity building should be an enhancement of our existing agencies' information dissemination strategies through user-friendly dashboards and, of course, platforms. We also see the need for sustained support from our policymakers because it is critical in the long-term success of the LMIS and our SAPSAR framework. TESDA's role as a key player in the ecosystem will be, of course, to advocate for these resources and to ensure that training programs remain responsive to the labor market needs and demand. Actually, in the whole the main objective of the training programs of TESDA based on the 8-point agenda is really training to trabajo. So we really committed to working with our partners to implement all of these recommendations and ensure our skills development programs are aligned with what we need, as mentioned. However, in addition, I just like to highlight some the importance of the study by Dr. Lawrence, although I was just asked to react on the study of Dr. Connie. Siguro may time pa naman ako, just short one lang. So on the study, so we have seen as presented by Dr. Lawrence, there are significant sectoral disparities in workers in elementary occupations, particularly dun sa na-mention ng mga industries. So the recommendation was really for us to have a targeted skill development for hard-to-fill jobs. So TVET really is needed for that. So we recognize that we have to respond to these needs to offer targeted programs and focus on these high-level analytical skills as well. So that's part of the 8-point agenda, and collaborating with our industry experts to develop and refine these programs will ensure, of course, relevance and effectiveness. The findings on gender difference and skill engagement and pay gap, yeah, it's good to know that women, they have bigger, pay compared to men. But of course, ang sabi nga natin, tama po that we have to balance this. So we do not want a gender disparity in terms of pay gap. So TESDA, we are trying to explore ways to really encourage more women to enter into technical fields through our gender-sensitive recruitment strategies and, of course, creating a learning environment. So we have the National Training Center for Women, which specifically caters for training programs for women in non-traditional trades. So this is located in Taguig, and we offer 90% of our learners or trainees there are women. So these are training on welding, automotive, ICT or mechatronics. That's really for women. So with majority of our workforce employed in low-level skills, TVET really, we really see that we have to play a very, very critical role, especially dun po sa upskilling initiatives. So we are trying to offer now flexible and modular training programs. So in response to evolving market needs. So we have flexible training delivery we have the TESDA online program. We are now offering micro-credentials, and so that we are able to help workers transition into higher skills occupations, or if they are trying to change or try to do another job. So we are trying to, and especially for those na may mga mabibilis yung pagpalit ng mga requirements for the ICT. So may mga micro-credential programs po tayo. So we are also trying, as mentioned po kanina, looking for multiple pathways as well for senior high school graduates. May na-mention po natin to that we're trying to embed TVET programs in the senior high school, and also also already mandating quality assurance or the assessment and certification of TVL track graduates. So we have noted that as in the study on the LMI, the study on the pay gaps recommends the use of an LMI to generate information skills requirements. So we recognize that LMI is very important to TESDA in alignment of our training programs based on our industry needs. So we recognize that incorporating the skills requirements in TVET ensures that graduates are employable and ready. With the direction of our Director General, Secretary Kiko Benitez, through the TESDA 8-point agenda, TESDA is committed to providing not just demand-driven and area-based TVET programs, but data-driven that will help Filipinos acquire the skills they need to succeed in the labor market. To quote po our Secretary, as he mentioned during the presentation, the TESDA Best 8-point agenda is about rationalizing TVET programming, optimizing TVET delivery, and maximizing our impact. And ultimately, it is about unlocking the potential of the Filipino people to perform the jobs required and demanded by the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Maraming salamat po at we're open to have the discussion po. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Director Sherlyn, for that very interesting set of comments. I guess we now go to our third and final discussant, Dr. Emily Christie Cabegin. Dr. Cabegin is a distinguished professor at the University of the Philippines School of Labor and Industrial Relations, where she imparts her extensive knowledge and expertise in labor economics and related fields. Dr. Emily, you now have the virtual floor.
So, thank you. Maraming salamat, PIDS, for inviting the SULAIR to participate in this forum. I will have to say at this point that the amount of work that Dr. Connie has done in both papers, along with her co-authors, Dr. Lawrence for the first paper, and Christina, Anne, and John, they are tremendous. And so but because I am discussant, I am drawing from my experience as a researcher, which have done some of studies which are similar and have dealt with some difficult problems in terms of data constraints, but also as a teacher in SULAIR, where my students are practitioners, human resource practitioners. So I will be presenting a different perspective, which you may consider or not. So I will now, it doesn't mean that it is opposing or disagreeing with your comments. So I presented it in a form of a question just for you to consider. So I will now share my PowerPoint. So wait, let me just put it in, is it here? lang. Tama ba? Sorry, are you, yeah, okay. So the first question that I have is, is discriminatory gender wage gap exist? Does it exist? Because, if you have a pay gap between males and females that are due to non-discriminatory factors, meaning that they are attributed to differences in productivity, then there is no reason to have a policy that will narrow the gap. People are paid according to their performance. And so that's why we have different salary scales for different, according to different ranks. And those ranks are also determined by your performance. And the reason why the discriminatory gender wage gap is very difficult to measure has also a lot to do with the limitations of the PISOC, the Philippine Standard Occupational Classification, because it does not allow the disaggregation at very specific levels of occupation. So, for example, the teachers have different, so you have this, what is your occupation? And you're a teacher, but a teacher can have different salary grades depending on the rank. Instructor 1 is paid differently from assistant professor 2 and professor 10. So there are different ranks. And these ranks, again, are not differentiated between male and female. It's just a court. If you have a PhD, then you move into professor. If you have so many publications, then and so on, you move into step 1, step 2. And because you also have that, the salary grade, DOLE, has their own salary scheme, the IDS is one. I think you know that it's not something that you differentiate if between male, female. It's really just and all the companies would design their salary structure to be free of bias. So it's something that you review regularly so that it will reflect, compensation scheme will reflect the performance or productivity of the worker, regardless of her or his gender identity. I think this one is also saying that even more complicated is the fact that salaries of teachers in the same rank can also differ between private and public schools. So Professor Lawrence is probably paid 3 times more or 4 times more than a professor of the same rank in UP. Okay. The other thing also, which is a data constraint, is that the respondent of the labor force survey, usually probably the household head spouse, is the one who provides the data on occupation of all the employed members of the household. So she cannot be very specific She cannot say Professor 1, 2, 3. Probably said teacher, no? Because the person, the worker, is not the one asked. It's somebody who was there when the enumerator went to the household. She can provide, and so that it cannot be at that very detailed level. And again, I already said that when I ask my students, so they are all HR people, they said there's really there's no distinction between the male, the female, or if you look at other gender identities, LGBTQA++. I mean, they don't discriminate. And yung gender, yung term na gender pala is also more complex now than before, because you are born a he, and when you enter the labor market, the he now becomes a she. So I do not know how that plays out in the survey. If you identify yourself as a woman but born as a man. But anyway, the point is that the salary structure of any company or organization is not designed differently between a man and a woman or LGBTQ. It's not according to the gender identity. It's really according to your performance. If they feel that there are biases, then the next year you have a way to review it and then you just change it. But it's really performance based. So there are also non-discriminatory causes of wage gap. And when this is non-discriminatory, you don't do something about it. Because, for example, market forces can play a role in determining or in engendering a gender wage gap. For example, in sports, male star basketball players are paid more than female star basketball players. Why? Because revenues are larger from the higher price and volume of ticket sales for male basketball games. People are willing to pay more and to watch more male basketball players play than they do for women. So that's why in sports, males are paid better. Boxing, you are willing to pay high price tickets to watch Manny Pacquiao play, but not willing to watch Nestle Petition play. Nobody is interested to watch. So things like that. It's driven by market forces, and you do not regulate. It's nothing to do, or probably less to do, with employer discrimination. No, the second one. So again, this one is something that again you can think about. Is whether in the first place there is really that gap that is true to employer discrimination. And then once you have it, then identify how it could be narrowed. But again, to me, it can be very difficult because of the data constraints. The second question that I'm asking here is about the job skills. So in the beginning, there was a question to the participants on whether you think that the job skills mismatch is very large or very significant. And I will pose the question of whether we really have a job skills crisis or a job crisis. Because there are hard to fill occupations, but there is also a massive unemployment and underemployment amounting to 10 million Filipinos in the labor force. You can see here, and the youth unemployment is 3 times higher than that of adults. 17%, they go to tertiary education, completed it, and they are not able to find the right jobs. 17% for the youth and 5%. It's down to 13, but still very high, and 4%. So you add up the unemployment, maybe unemployment close to 3 million, and then 7 million underemployed. So that's a huge number of Filipinos who are either unemployed or underemployed. If you are going to look at the profile of education, you would see that there is increasing education over time. So they have very high unemployment rates, but education is already increasing. You can see here, for example, that the percent of the youth with elementary education is only 6%, and corresponding figure for adults is 23%. But you know, the elementary occupations comprise more than 30%. The jobs, elementary occupations, which require elementary education, is 30%. 30% of the workforce are employed in elementary occupations, which require only elementary education. So that gives you a bit of an understanding of the mismatch can also be overeducation. No? You can see here that there is already an increasing growth of education, particularly among the junior and the senior high school, but also quite high for college graduates and above. No? I'm saying that because I will explain that maybe investments to increasing the quality of education may be more significant than increasing education per se. Okay, let me. So as you can see from here, the unemployment rate is actually higher. So this is the unemployment rate, and it's actually higher for the better educated. So it's not as much for the, well, it's still high, but much higher still for the better educated. Which means that you improve education does not always lead to higher employability. This one is really a simple identification of overeducation. It's not like the very complex exercise done by Dr. Connie and Dr. Lawrence. It's just simply the ILO has this. Okay, so you have managers which needs at least college educated. Elementary occupations should the matched educational level would be elementary. So if you are high school and you are working, in elementary occupations, then you're overeducated. And this one will show you that more than 50% of the youth and more than 40% of the adults are overeducated. They have more education than what is required by their occupations. And this overeducation is not something that is temporary or transitory. It seems to persist over time and even worsen. And then now I would also show that the structure of the enterprises that we have in the Philippines. So you have your micro, small, medium, and large. And the micro enterprises comprise of 89%. The small is 10%. The medium is 0.5%. And the large is 0.5%. And I'm showing this because the demand is coming from the industry. And the hard to fill occupations, which would require higher level skills, are not coming from the 99% of small and micro. These are enterprises that are, many of them are exempted from having to pay the minimum wage because they do not have the capacity to pay even decent wages for their workers, much less to adopt technology, and which would require higher level skills of workers. Where do they exist? They exist here in the large companies, which are just 0.5% of the total enterprises. And I think when we will talk about because this one will involve then the targeting, with which ones really have experience or report having deficiency in skills in terms of certain jobs. So this can be targeted, the 0.5% large primarily. So you do a skills needs assessment survey. These are important across occupations and across sectors or industries. These are important. The 0.5% large companies. So the mismatch between the skills supplied by the education system and the industry can be solved. I mean, this is one by, and I think very important, it's done in other countries, by a dual training and apprenticeship joint industry academy. So they are more or less the same thing. Dual training program, apprenticeship program, joint industry academy programs. The large companies have more assets, they have more resources, and they have a higher rate of adopting emerging technologies. Very difficult. I mean, the emerging technologies, to adopt them is very costly. UP could not catch up with the pace of technological advancement, no? But then so also are many of our industries, definitely not the 99% of the enterprises, possibly some medium enterprises, and mostly the large companies will have that capability to adopt. And when you technological transformation, of course, would have a higher rate of shifts in skill requirements. Some skills become obsolescent, and some will have to be created. New ones will have to be created as you adopt new technologies. Having said that, so I am saying here, basically my point here is that sometimes, the blame is on the education sector because they supply low skilled workers. But sometimes it's really, but I'm not saying it's very difficult for the education sector to catch up with the pace of technological advancement. The industry is usually the ones who adopt it first. And therefore, the dual training program is very important. So, and this one has to be amended by a law. It has to be strengthened. No? So, where the training is now done by the industry. However, even if I do say that, I also believe that the quality of Philippine education needs to be improved. The tertiary graduates in the Philippines have lower skills and competencies than tertiary graduates in Singapore. The Program for International Student Assessment, or the PISA, in 2022 showed that the Philippines ranked third lowest in science and sixth lowest in math and reading. So I believe that the Philippine education has to be improved, but it should start in early schooling. You don't just jump into the college level. So you start with early schooling, improve the science, math, reading, in all this. So, and then you build upon that towards tertiary education. So, the investments would be voluminous because then you have to start from earlier schooling. You don't just jump into tertiary schooling. You don't, if it's something that requires complex or advanced calculus or statistics to be able to learn better about data science and so on, then you have to go backwards. You start with early schooling. Wait, sorry. Yeah, I'm just saying here that the nature of work. Now I'm going now to skill needs, and this is the last one. Skills needs anticipation. If the technology advances at an unprecedented rate, then the nature of work and skills requirement also evolves and shifts at a rapidly accelerated rate. And so it's not static. There has to be a mechanism where you review the skills framework regularly, especially for fast-moving types of skills. The Future of Jobs 2023 report shows that 40% of the jobs will be disrupted by technological change. And therefore, there is need for constant reskilling and upskilling of the manpower. Again, much of this will have to be done by the industry. And here also, for the framework, the ILO emphasizes the key role of social dialogue, where you have key government agencies. I think this one was mentioned by Ma'am Damo of the DOLE. The social dialogue is crucial across all the phases of the skills needs anticipation, assessment of the framework, forecasting, and then finally coming up with future occupations and education targets. No? That has to be embedded. They suggested that this one will be embedded in institutional structures and procedures for skills needs assessment. So you will have key government agencies, you have labor market actors, meaning the workers group, the employers group, Philippine Chamber of Commerce, social partners like the academe, research institutions. in Bangladesh, for example, they have, but we also have this now, the tripartite skills council. Mom Damo already mentioned it earlier. So, but Bangladesh also has that. And also in Finland, they employ a social, the decision making on what types of skills is some consensual. It's a consensus to develop these occupations and then also the education targets. It's not something that's done by, it involves, again, a tripartite bodies of the occupation, and then they do it by occupation, by industry, no? Okay. So that's just what it is. Yeah, okay, so that's just what I'm saying, but I think this one was already answered by Ma'am Damo of the DOLE, that there are actually tripartite. I'm just saying that perhaps in the framework, this can be emphasized, that along the different phases, that there is now embedded in it this process of social dialogue with all of these labor market actors and other stakeholders. No? The other one that I want to say is that the skills anticipation framework should be closely aligned and in coherence with the apprenticeship system and dual training policies, because then eventually you will have to translate the skills needs into training. But we don't have that yet. The apprenticeship system is very much underdeveloped now in the Philippines. And in 2022, and this is the one that I said from one of the TESDA, that only 7% of the total TVET graduates are actually enterprise-based that is applying the apprenticeship system or dual training system. So there could be only 7%. In Germany, for example, because this is now the modality that will correct or narrow the gap, the mismatch between the skills and the needs of the industry. It's the dominant or the primary modality of learning. But in our TVET, the Philippine TVET, only 7% are enterprise-based. And I think there should be studies that will now solve this problem of the lack of participation of the enterprises in TVET programs. So you have 93% who are not part of the, or not graduates of this modality of joint industry and academic institution program. The adoption of new technologies is costly, and of course, the education system cannot keep up with the accelerated pace of technological change. And that's why the dual training program is really crucial to bridging the skills gap. Again, I'd like to say that I'm part of this paper by the ADB. So we did it 2020. And by then, at the time, the proportion of graduates from the modality of enterprise-based dual training is 4%. After 4 years, it increased to 7%. It's too slow to move into it becoming a dominant mode. And I do not think that you can bridge the skills gap if you do not involve the industry in terms of doing the curriculum, in terms of the training, in terms of assessment, and even certification. In Germany, for example, the one who certifies is the Chamber of Commerce, Trade and Commerce Chamber of Commerce. And there is a need to pass bills strengthening the apprenticeship and dual training program. So you have the education and enterprise-based training and framework bill. This one is now SB Senate Bill 257. And I think that this one should be pushed, no? Senate and House bills on the new national apprenticeship program. These bills have to be pushed so that we can now have a legislative framework on enterprise-based training or apprenticeship program. And then we can have the skills needs anticipation framework be consistent with this apprenticeship system or framework, as well as dual training framework. I think that's it. Yeah, okay. So thank you. I will now stop the sharing. So I think that's everything that I have.
Thank you, Dr. Emily, for your comments. I guess we now have less than 15 minutes for our open forum.
Sorry,
May I, at this
sorry,
time,
I exceeded. Sorry.
may I now request our presenters and our discussants to please open your respective cameras. So I think regardless of the technical methodologies and terminologies applied by both our presenters and discussants, our topic today is really very practical or pragmatic in terms of coverage, because what we're looking at are concerns very close to our hearts and guts. So this is because work and livelihoods translate to security and survival among our people. So I think even if we don't listen to those technical presentations, our discussions can be very, very interesting because of intuitive inputs, not only coming from you guys, but also coming from our participants. So now let's open our floor for, I think, more interesting exchanges. No? But before we ask questions, I think it's but proper to ask Dr. Lawrence and Dr. Connie to respond to the manifestations of our discussants. Dr. Lawrence, can you start?
Okay, so well, thank you very much, Dr. Emily. It's been a long time. No? Well, Dr. Emily was my chair back in LaSalle, and I have to correct her. It's not really 4 times because the public institutions have benefited from successive wage increases, and well, but still there may be a differential. Okay, so but I really agree with you. It's something that we really cannot measure. The best thing that we can offer is to approach it using the statistical discrimination angle. And what you mentioned a while back, I think if only we have that kind of data, or if we have that kind of inputs from, I mean, your students are from HR, then we could have a more nuanced view. But this is essentially it's a statistical exercise. And then, of course, there's a gap. How do you account for this, for the gap? And then we offered, or we simply adopted a decomposition procedure to identify which of the factors may help in reducing the gap. But I also sino yun si ED Charlene ba na dapat we should not view it na parang may advantage yung isang group just because their wages on average are much higher than the other group. And I think I agree with Dr. Emily that a more nuanced view is needed, but based on the study, it's just a statistical treatment that we implemented in order to surface whatever effects may be appreciated coming from these skills variables. So yeah, but then I really, appreciated the input. And then the second one is, well, most of the questions came from you, Dr. Emily. Uh, so yeah, there are non-discriminatory causes of wage gap, and then you've excellently pointed out that we shouldn't look into, or we shouldn't always be searching for discrimination, and it's something that we don't observe. It's happening in the workplace, even if they design the same, or even if they design a non-discriminatory job design or structure, there are there is discrimination in the workplace. It's too bad we cannot measure it, and that's one of the more, I think, the more relevant problems that may effectively prevent women from participating in the labor market, because they now have the idea that there's discrimination, and then that discourages them from participating. So uh, its context is specific, actually, because I saw also a question in the Q&A box. Its context is specific. We don't actually know how it's being perceived by women. And if they perceive that it's bad for them, they will not participate in the labor market. And I'm just, in response to the question, I started to think about a plausible answer. And we have the Magna Carta of women, and that may provide the legal framework to prevent discrimination from happening. And I know DOLE in one of their plans that is explicitly stated, okay, to use cross-cutting strategies to at least address the discrimination issue. Okay, so and then yeah, I couldn't agree more. Invest in early education. I'm a firm believer of Heckman and Kuhn's approach. We really cannot go far if we just continue to provide access to tertiary education brought about by this free tuition law.
Yeah.
Quality should be emphasized, and the quality of learning is different from, just getting the degree. And I think it was also presented a while ago that, our tertiary, our graduates from HEIs are ill-equipped compared to their counterparts in Singapore. Okay, so I think I will stop there. Okay, so thank you very much for the comments.
Thank you, Dr. Lawrence. I think, Dr. Connie, your turn.
Um, uh, Doc Sunny, dun lang kay response kay ED Jean's inputs. Actually, ED Jean, your comments are really comprehensive, and these are actually excellent recommendations for the actions of key agencies, including yourself. So thank you very much for adding these recommendations on top of our recommendations, which are actionable by key agencies. For yung sa comment ni Dr. Emily on discrimination, agree also. There are, of course, kasi noon, before naniniwala ako, parang noong iniisip ko yung mga discrimination na yan, ang iniisip ko is, bakit masama ang discrimination? Bakit masama yung pay gap? Why is pay gap bad? When it reflects, for example, differences in efforts or differences in talent. So there should be really a pay gap in that sense. So this is parang that's also my thinking before. But there are pay gaps that are arising from, for example, differences in skills that can be mitigated by policies. So for example, in the study, perhaps it was not presented by Doc Lawrence already in the interest of time, but I believe that a part of our result indicates that if you have if you have high analytical and technical skills, the pay gap is lower. And so there are policies in that policy interventions in our programs that can be crafted in that sense. So my take is I agree that there are non-discriminatory sources, but if there are sources that can be mitigated by policies, then there should be intervention. Yun muna, Doc Sunny, for others to speak also.
Well, thank you, Dr. Connie. I guess I need to follow up on that response of first, because one of the more interesting inputs we've gotten from you as well as from our participants is that question about, bridging that pay gap that you mentioned. You mentioned that analytical skills, social skills, basic skills actually narrow that gap. And in one of the presentation slides, it was mentioned that the gender-related disparity is also being narrowed by the same. But I think in Dr. Emily's presentation earlier, there was that contrary manifestation that it seems that higher education is not paying quite well, with much more of our higher educated individuals not having employment. So what would be your response to that, Dr. Connie?
Very tricky because sometimes we equate education with skills. two different things. And I think that perhaps we can give the floor to our other speakers in terms of expounding the differences between education and skills. Perhaps Edie Aline or Edie G.
Thank you, Dr. Connie. I guess that's another very interesting point. No, education doesn't really equate to just skills. My next question probably would be best answered by TESDA Director Charlene, because in one of the presentation slides, the bottom dweller in terms of occupation and in terms of specificity was agriculture and agriculture-related engagements, with highest for those engaged in science and engineering. Is this probably the reason why we are not just looking down on agriculture, but we are also experiencing less productivity in that sector? Is that related to specificity, or probably the presence of specific skills in these occupational engagements? Director Charlene?
Yes, thank you for that, Dr. Sani. Actually, in our programs, agriculture proved to be, sila yung may pinakamadami din na nag-avail. Contrary to but of course, sinasabi natin that agriculture, parang it's not sexy. But looking at it in terms of our programs and allocation din sa ating mga agriculture is still one of the highest one. And if you can see, if I'm trying to look into our graduates in terms of employment, in terms of major occupation group. So number 3 second one is skilled agriculture and forestry fishery workers. So I think that's something that natin is specificity. Yeah, but we're trying to look at it na ito pa rin because we're still an agricultural country and majority also of our regions are still into agriculture. So siguro nandun po na very specific because we also have, I think we have more than 20 programs under the agriculture sector. So yung availability niya is there. So there's access, and we also have different modes of agriculture. So yung merong mga farm schools that we're trying to also promote. So doon ko siguro nakikita na though sabi niyo technical, but then bababa doon sa nakita na yung sa bottom line yung sa agri, but doon nga sa mga nag-a-avail, they're still there. And in terms of graduates, so that's about the graduates. And in terms of employment, yung nakita po namin dito in terms of the regional distribution din ng ating graduates in the last 5 years, ang employment natin na may highest would be Region 12, 10 and 11. So these are actually basically agricultural regions then. So yun lang I think that's how I say it, Dr. Domingo.
Thank you for that manifestation and answer. I think we have gaps in both ends, no? From those highly educated to those with more specific, less specific skills, as you mentioned earlier. Okay, my next question is, I think for Dole. It was mentioned earlier that, well, the same mismatch has been present for, I think, more than 5 decades. So the question there is, how do we go forward, no? Knowing all of these, knowing that some of our other interventions or most of our interventions have not been effective for the last half century or so. Ma'am Jean, can you answer that?
Okay, napakabigat na tanong yan, no? Dr. Sani, no? So matagal ng problema po talaga natin. In fact, during the last budget hearing sa Congress, that's one of the talagang problems na or issue na ibinato sa amin, no? So marami ho ngayong programa ang DOLE na talaga yung job skill LMIS, no? Importante ho yung merong labor market information system that can also reach the underserved, no, areas, no, like yung kaya importante ho yung connectivity, yung ganon. And I think the Bureau of Local Employment is really looking on the IT infrastructure right now. Yung isa ho. And then kami ho, mismo from the research, yung karanasan po namin, no? Balikan ko lang ho yung sa agriculture, no? Kasi naalala ko yung aming isang study on modernization of the agriculture sector, no? Pero this is more on the productivity side, no? Medyo kaunti na lang po actually yung nagunta sa sektor na yon. No, nabanggit ni Director na maaring hindi sexy, pero ngayon ho ang parang recommendation namin diyan ay to increase the enrollment of yung ng youth lalo na sa agriculture kasi konti na lang po talaga ay lagyan mo siya ng yung mga in terms of mechanization, yung mga parang techie skills, no? In terms of management ng mga, yung pagdating sa agriculture, not exactly yung talagang, yung backward na, the traditional way of doing that, no? Talagang mechanization. And then also, dun ho sa mga consultation na ginawa natin, kasi marami ho ngayong yung like green jobs, 'di ba? Yan. Tapos yung acceleration talaga ng technology, no? Um, may mga sektor ho talaga na may mga surplus pa talaga tayo. At may mga shortages. Nararanasan na natin yan. Kanina nabanggit dun sa study ni Dr. Lawrence, may hard to fill. At meron pa po kaming mission critical skills nung araw. At kasama ho dun yung mga piloto na kinukuha ng mga ibang airlines, no, international airlines, even technicians, no, yung mga aircraft technicians, so considered yan as mission critical skills. Ngayon ho yung nakikita namin talagang maraming graduates, doon pa rin ho sa mga business ad, yung mga ganyan. Pero kung titingnan ho namin yung requirements ngayon, let's say, ito ho yung example lang ng green jobs because we're doing yung National Green Jobs HRD Plan. No? So nakita ho namin dun sa mga sektor na tinatawag nating key employment generators, marami yung pangangailangan nila with yung sa IT na lang ho, like yung mga data analyst, yung mga ganyan na machine learning software engineers, yung mga ganyan. No? And then even dun sa IT, talagang meron na ho silang shortage. No? Sabi nila kasi with the technology, nako baka maraming mawawalan ng trabaho. No? But actually, marami ho talagang kailangan. At dapat talagang paigtingin natin yung enrollment sa STEM. No? Kasi ang karamihan ngayon pa rin yung sa mga bata, nandun pa rin sila sa mga, di natin sinasabing hindi maganda yon, no? Pero dapat ho siguro, it's about time na talagang we have to, parang sa Singapore ho, yung ginagamit nila, na redirect to those areas that really would require manpower, no? Yung supply talaga. Hindi dun sa, alam na natin talagang parang ito rin perennial na maraming surplus tayo, no? Kaya marami ho doon. Titingnan ninyo, nakakalungkot yung sinabi nga ni Dr. Cabegin, no? Na marami talagang educated unemployed, na mga college graduates pa na hanggang ngayon ay walang trabaho, no? So nakakalungkot pong isipin. So yun ho siguro yung dapat nating gawin, strengthen talaga yung collaboration between the academe, the TVET, and then the private sector and the government. At yan na ho ngayon ang ginagawa ng mga ilang employers. Ito ho yung mga malaga na mga employers na talagang like for the energy, no? Nakikipag-partner na po sila with, meron kaming mga kilalang mga malalaking kumpanya with, let's say, Batangas, yung State University, Cavite State University, talagang sila po ay talagang nag-i-invest na and pati yung curriculum ho, tinitingnan na nila ngayon to make sure na parang in a way customized yun sa requirements nila, no, as companies, no. And then kanina po nabanggit din ni Dr. Emily about yung sa apprenticeship, no. I think kasi may ano ho yun kami nila TESDA, we work together we submitted our position paper sa Senate. Kala namin eventually po ma-approve na. But here comes EBET, yung enterprise-based training, no, na parang ang kailang ay ipag-marry po namin sila. Parang may tingnan ninyo, instead na meron kayong apprenticeship at meron pang itong law na to, i-ano nyo na sila, i-merge nyo na sila. So ngayon po ay parang pending yan, no? But tuloy-tuloy naman no, ang DOLE at TESDA at ang aming Legislative Technical Committee on Legislative Matters na para maano na, kumbaga mag-submit na kami. I think we have already submit our position paper and siguro sa susunod po sa pagbukas nitong Kongreso ay talagang matutukan na to. Of course, dual training, yan ang mga kailangan natin, internship, apprenticeship talaga para to make sure po na talagang yung pag-graduates na itong mga to ay tiyak na meron ho talagang trabaho sila. So, yun lang po for the meantime.
Thank you, Director Jean. You've given us a lot of inputs. I guess my next and probably one of the final questions for our panelists is for Dr. Lawrence, and just probably to add to your manifestations. So what we're seeing now is an extended manifestation of this skills gap. And that is probably relating to market failure, and hence also necessitating responses or interventions from government. I think I've also seen that in one of the slides presented. So we've been doing it for decades and decades, and yet we are seeing subpar results. How do we see better results eventually? What can we do better, Dr. Lawrence?
Yeah, that's also a hard question, Dr. Sani. Okay, but then what I can say is that I revisited the Philippine Development Plan Chapter 4 that's relevant for increasing income earning ability among Filipinos, and I think most of the issues that we're discussing are already in there. And the PDP, they try to look for accomplishments in the by the past administration, and then if it's not accomplished, then it's going to be written there. For instance, the PQF, it's not being formally implemented. It's not, but then there are other issues that are emerging from it, and then so my view is that I think there's a disconnect between our educational institutions and industry. That's the first one. I think it's eloquently pointed out. But also, I think we focus more on years of schooling, on the sheepskin effects of diplomas, rather than the skills that our learners should actually be able to gain or accumulate. And it occurred to me that during the pandemic, I was able to read a lot of House bills that focus on skills development. And I think the current TESDA Secretary or Director General, it's supports lifelong learning. And it's one of the bills that are being considered right now. And if this can only be implemented, I think we will start to see improvements in the skills gap. It's because if we are able to encourage our learners to deliberately direct themselves to activities that will improve or enhance their skills, then that's going to, to result, I think, in the reduction of skill disparities. It's just that I mean, we're talking about we're asking what the government can do, but it's really dependent on how schools are better able to motivate their learners to focus on what they can do, to focus on what they can improve in terms of skills. So I think Dr. Emily pointed out that we should focus on early childhood education, and I believe in that. We have to at least, and the lifelong learning framework is one of the, if it's going to be properly implemented, I think it will have a favorable impact on the way we view competencies, skills, etc. So medyo mahirap, Dr. Sonny, tanong mo. So if they would like to see what the government, I think DOLE, TESDA are now implementing the PDP. It's quite obvious from your respective presentations and responses. Nandun po lahat yung mga issue na relevant for today's discussion.
Well, excellent response, Dr. Lawrence. And you've mentioned that our responses from DOLE and TESDA also contribute to that answer. Yes. I think the last question is for Dr. Emily. You presented earlier a lot of numbers, a lot of graphs showing us data with regard to possibly the skills gap and the labor market in the Philippines. So the question really is, are we effectively monitoring and monitoring the upskilling and reskilling of our labor force? We may be looking at data that's not applicable or lacking in terms of substance, no? So that question probably is up there, no, for an academician from a researcher's point of view. Are we doing enough to monitor correctly and then eventually respond correctly? Dr. Emily.
I think that it's not so much monitoring because we don't have the capacity to monitor, but I think that there is a need to, because our educational system is patterned after the American system. But I think because of the technological advancement, we should shift to pattern it more with European German system. So so you have your liberal education that 4 years, etc. But Germany also has like a counterpart. I think Mom Charlene, they have a counterpart for skill based, so that you just don't start with NC1, NC2. So they have NC1, NC2, NC3, NC4, up to NC5, where you get a diploma that is analogous to a diploma in a university or a college. So basically, because we will have the same thing. Not all the skills are more theory based or liberal arts and so on. It's skill based. And so perhaps if the TVET education can be strengthened, so we will now have a counterpart of a college diploma, for example, in a regular education system that we have now, in the TVET, like a diploma in what skills that would be. I think that would be the one. And also, again, emphasizing, ma'am, the need for dual training program. You only have 7%, which are enterprise based. But so that I think that one will solve the skills gap. Otherwise, you will have the same thing, that the education sector, which so the not regular education system will teach you, say, I-10, and you graduate and they already are using I-20, something like that. Especially if you're in UP, where we cannot even have laptops, the faculty members. Anyway, so so yeah, that I think a counterpart of a university diploma or a college diploma, and then develop that in the TVET system, the way they do, the same way as they do it in the European Germany system.
Well, thank you
Sorry,
for that response, Dr. Emily. Director Charlene raised her hand, but I think we've run out of time. So, but I would like to ask Director Charlene to actually add to her closing statements the response that she was trying to make. So, I guess right now we go to our closing statements, and we start with Director Charlene. Her closing statements plus the supposed manifestation or question you were trying to raise earlier. Dr. Charlene.
Yes,
Director Charlene.
yes, thank you. Thank you, sir. So actually, I was just trying to, siguro respond then to some of the comments early on by Dr. Emily. But initially, because since a presentation about the enterprise base, yes, we recognize that that has been seen in the data that we have a very low, though it's the most sa employment, mataas yung ating enterprise base. But as mentioned, we're trying to strengthen that, and that's also the priority of the Secretary Secretary Kiko Benitez. And to add lang po, the Enterprise-Based Training and Education Act is already it is gone through the BICAM, and I think it's just waiting for the signature and approval of the President. So that would actually try to really it would try to harmonize, as mentioned by Director Damo. It would try to harmonize all the enterprise-based programs, apprenticeship, dual training, learnership, and all the likes. But at least it's one framework. But of course, iba-iba pa rin po yung BTS, iba din yung apprenticeship. So yun yung we're trying to strengthen that. That's part of that's part of our direction, and the TESDA will be the one to lead in the development of the IRR together with the DOLE, that enterprise-based training and education. To respond also to about the levels po. So in the Philippine qualifications framework, we all know that levels po natin is 1 to 8, and yung levels 1 to 5 would be TVET. And that would depend. Doon din po natin ina-align ang ating mga standards and training regulations on those descriptors. So it's aligned to the descriptors of level 1, level 2, level 3. And tama po kayo, level 5 is diploma program. And that's also one of the direction, as I mentioned po dun sa isang priorities development of more diploma programs. So we have around 600 plus diploma programs already developed with our training institutions and being deployed din po by the different TVIs, and also some higher education institutions are also offering it. So that's also the direction. So yun po ma'am, yun po yung mga natin. So mga diploma programs, and that's really highly technical. So we were to respond also to those need na may mga tayo, mga industries that would be needing that. So targeting this programs dun sa mga may demand. As mentioned din po yan, that's you're part of the TVET sector study. So yun yung isang natin dun sa ADB study. That's why we're doing that. So in the end, to everyone, so that's actually the direction, as I mentioned po kanina, ang ni Secretary Benitez is really training to employment. So it's really about employment outcomes of our program. So demand-driven, area-based, and it's really translating to employment. So maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Director Sherlyn. Director Jean, for your closing ideas.
Okay. Unang-una, maraming salamat po sa PIDS for having this forum, no. At medyo kinapos tayo sa oras, no. And then yung sa DOLE naman po, yung problema natin sa unemployment and underemployment skills mismatch. Tapos na ho kami doon sa recognition, and we are really doing a lot of things, no, together with TESDA, no, to address this perennial problem of job skills mismatch. And importante ho sa amin, nabanggit ni Dr. Emily, yung talagang yung social dialogue, no. Hindi pwedeng kami-kami lang, no. We really need the voices coming from hindi lang po tripartite, it's really multipartite, because we have the academe, the TVET institutions, the training institutions, no, para ito po ay talagang ma-actionan na, no, kasi matagal na ito. And of course, at the ground level, we have the peso. Talagang ngayon po ay ni-strengthen nila yung peso para mas kasi sila yung mas nasa ground, no. They can really they know what's happening on the ground, no. And in fact, sa ngayon po ay nagkakaroon ng National Peso Congress, no. At marami silang parang capacity building on that. So again, maraming salamat for this, and as member of the SERP, no, we are always glad to be part of this ganitong klaseng forum. Salamat po.
Thank you very much, Director Jean. Dr. Emily, your final statements. You're muted.
Sorry, sabihin ko lang na maraming salamat because mahirap talaga yung tanong about tsaka yung problema, very difficult, and I just appreciate that there is already there are works, no, on this area, so we can begin the discussion and hopefully come up with solutions. No? Salamat sa inyo. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Emily. So I'm going to Dr. Lawrence before I ask Dr. Connie for her closing statements. Dr. Lawrence.
So siguro, thank you, Dr. Sonny. So I learned a lot just by listening to actual policies and initiatives being implemented in key government agencies at the forefront of all of this, no? Ang hirap din. Pag-measure, mahirap, no? Pag-advocate, mahirap din. And then you really have to, it's a partnership, eh. We can, nobody can do it alone. And it's very insightful, the kind of discussions that we had this afternoon. I learned a lot, and then the directions are already spelled out, no? So we're going to go back to the paper and then do something about it, reflect the comments that you've shared with us. Okay, so marami pong salamat sa panelists and to PIDS, no, for the opportunity to present our work. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lawrence. Dr. Connie, final thoughts before we close.
Ako siguro, because I started the presentation saying that the problem is all about information, being imperfect and incomplete. And so it's all only fitting that my takeaway would be also on the information as well. And so on takeaway ko is that it's empowering to have information, but there's power in information, and even more if the information that we have is accurate and comprehensive. So, in the context of the discussion today, I think that it's very important for key agencies to have this social dialogue and institutional collaboration, and then work together to establish a good skills data foundation. Yun kasi ako, Doc Sunny, kasi researcher tayo, kailangan natin ng magandang data, and then, and yun, policies will be informed if we have good skills data foundation, which in our belief needs improvement pa. So yun siguro, Dr. Sunny.
Thank you very much, Dr. Connie, and excellent presentations and manifestations from our panel members. I think we deserve a very big round of applause. Okay, so before we officially close the program, let me announce the raffle winners for today's webinar. For those joining our event for the first time, PIDS selects 2 winners from Zoom and 1 winner from Facebook Live as a token of our gratitude for your attendance and very active participation. So our winners for today are from Zoom. We have Jose Carlo Asturias from the Development Academy of the Philippines, and Ms. Paula Deles from the Investing in Women organization. So those are the 2 winners from Zoom. From Facebook, we have Ms. Geneva Eller, without an indicated organization. But please contact our team and you'll be able to get your prizes. So congratulations again to our winners. And hopefully you join us again in our next seminar. So once again, we appreciate all your attendance today. The speakers' presentations will be made available through our websites and social media platforms. Meanwhile, you may download a copy of the studies from the link provided in the Zoom chat box and the Facebook comment section. So please, again, help us improve our events by answering our feedback form through the link provided in both Zoom and Facebook. Well, note as well that your e-certificates of participation will be sent automatically once you accomplish and submit those feedback forms. And those feedbacks and recommendations will help us make our upcoming events better and more suited to your needs and interests. So keep in touch. You may follow PIDS on Facebook, Twitter, X, and YouTube. Particularly for more updates, no? Because we have a lot in store for you, not only for October, but also for November. In November, we'll have, I think, 7 public engagements. So big numbers for PIDS, and hopefully you guys again participate. So we hope that you have gained a lot from our webinar today, and join us again for our engagements, not only again for October, but November as well as December. So please visit our webpage after this and wait for the uploading of the presentation materials for your own record and consumption. So we hope that you have gained valuable insights from today's event. Improving labor market outcomes requires targeted investments in education, TVET programs, and better alignment between skills and industry demands, especially in high-demand sectors like IT, BPM, and manufacturing, and then as manifested earlier, also in agriculture. As we strengthen labor market information systems and foster regional skills development, it is also equally essential that we prepare the workforce for technological disruptions and other emerging challenges to ensure not only their productivity and capacity, but also their resilience. With those final thoughts, we thank you again. We hope you have a very nice day ahead. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Recording stopped.